Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, the February 23rd, 2026 special meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. So just welcome to the first of our two-day review of the budget. I do want to thank all staff for the work that's been done. This has been a very, very challenging process to try and keep the levy increase at a reasonable rate, and I think that we've managed to do that when considering the combined rates of the county and education. But I really appreciate, on behalf of council, the work that you've all done in trying to bring forward something that's reasonable and it can be accepted by our public. So having said that, I will move into new business and the treasurer's report on the first draft of the budget. Good morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So as you've mentioned, we are presenting a budget here today with an increase of just over 9% in the levy. Of that 9%, 1.77% is related to growth and 2.5% is for cost of living increases for goods and services. So it basically means that 4.75% of that increase can be attributed to additional projects and programs offered by the township, but also for costs that are dictated to the township. So there are varying costs across the board that have had some changes. One of them is police services is up 11%, which is an increase of 111,000 to the budget, to the levy. Now this is offset by additional OMPF funding in 2026. Over the next couple of days, our department heads will be presenting their cost centers and the costs and changes in relation to the 2026 budget. And so at this point, for myself, I would believe we would start with the transportation, public works.
If you would, before we start with transportation, just for the public's information, say what our combined percent increase is.
Yes, through you, Mayor. As I said, the levy increase is 9.17%, and the overall tax rate increase at this point with the county and education included would be 5.57%.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Thorne.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. On behalf of myself and my team of Public Works, I just want to say thank you very much for another great year of support and the projects that we've worked on. We can't do this work without your support ongoing. So I just wanted to take a minute and say thank you, and we really appreciate everything that Council has done for myself and my team. Also, I'd like to thank our CAO, our treasurer, and our senior staff, and all of my team for the great season that we've had. It was certainly a challenging one with snow and staff and weather and things of that nature. So I think that we did really well going through it, and just want to thank everybody for their ongoing support. To jump right into it, I can start to speak to the budget highlights, and then we can get right into the pages. So starting with the airport. Michelle, send my battery, so I just don't want it to shut off. Sorry, just a second. Oh, there we go. I got it. Sorry about that. So starting with the airport, you'll see that we have a security fence installation. That's been kind of ongoing for a couple of years now. We keep leaving that in there. So when we start looking at some of our hangar repairs, we're going to add it at the same time. So we're hoping to have that added again this year. Another large project that we're looking at with the airport will be the roof and siding replacement. on the hangar group E, F, G, and H. Unfortunately, the roofs are starting to show some wear and tear, and we need to get them replaced. In addition, we're going to be doing some asphalt grinding around the hangar doors on the new hangar group as well. This will be to allow the water to have positive drainage away from the building. So any driving water that hits the building runs down it at the doors, won't run into the building, they'll run away from it. Two fly-in events that have been our previous ones that have been very successful. So we're fingers are crossed for another two successful ones this year. Considerations for the repairs of hangar D, and that's kind of where that security fence installation will come into play. And then potentially the purchase of a food building with council's approval. Moving on to building and maintenance, we're looking at an accessible lift if the grant approval comes through for the Stanhope Firefighters Community Center. We're going to be also looking at increasing the attic insulation and air venting in the roof. This will be a joint project with the fire department. Oxton Community Center, continuing our accessibility assessment, eave trough cleaning, and then the public engagement for the building design. As council is aware, we brought those three designs forward. The Dorset Rec Center, the HVAC, so an AC system project. And then an accessible lift replacement. I'm actually pleased to say that this was put in there, but the lift has already been replaced, and it gets its inspection on Thursday of this week. North Shore Road Garage, excuse me, the new garage, we were looking at putting the asphalt apron on the backside of the building. The old North Shore Roads garage, which we are referring to as our maintenance garage, replacement of the current internet provider. And that's from our being recommended by our IT department. The Coagama Lake garage, fuel system relocation and upgrade, key fob security system for the building. And then the Stanhope Museum will be the exterior painting of the building. Under cemeteries, we're going to be looking at installing posts and gates at a couple of the sites. This has been ongoing. We did a couple last year, and we'll be doing another hopefully this year. And then we'll be looking at building the second section of the roadway that works between the green burial and the regular burial at St. Stephen's. Under equipment, we'll be looking at the delivery of a new tandem truck that was ordered in 2025. We're going to be potentially ordering another truck for delivery in 2027. We'll be purchasing the half ton that will be delivered in 2026. And then we'll be purchasing a new lawn tractor with an aerator, purchase of stationary computers and iPads, and then the surplus of the dump truck that we're going to be replacing, and a lawn tractor. Under personnel, again, we'll be looking at hiring casual winter workers. This is something we've done every year, so I've just added it again. And then continuing training and education. Just to make a quick note on the training and education, we do have a lot of new staff this year, a lot of great new staff. And so you'll see in the budget item that the training budget has gone up a little bit. And this is to accommodate that new staff that are not currently up to certain standards in our area, in our field of work. Excuse me. Under construction and roads, we're going to be continuing working on North Shore Road project and the rehabilitation of the road surface there. Under surface treatment, this is our annual treatment that we provide, and we'll be looking at the SS is a slurry seal treatment. The SST is a single surface treatment, and then the DSTF is the double surface treatment with a fog. Nothing new here. These are standard practices that we've been putting in play for the past couple of years for our roads. Ditching and culvert replacement generally is we go after our roads that we're going to be working on first, and then any problem areas after. And then traffic sign inspection and inventory. This will be to have the company come in and do our retro reflectivity, our checking our signs, and then replacing them as needed. Under bridges, regular inspection. This is our biannual year that it falls into for our OSIM inspection. And then cribbing replacement on the Bear Lake Bridge. And that's it for the highlights.
Questions, excuse me, or comments?
Oh, it's easy enough. I can go into my starting with the equipment and then
The one thing that I would ask about is that it's my recollection that when we talked about parking and options for parking, that we had sort of given the tentative direction that we might like to go ahead with the widening of Big Hawk Lake Road, depending on how it fit into the budget. So I'm kind of wondering if there had been any raw estimates done on what that might cost.
through your mayor, the report that I brought to council had the rough estimate. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me, but I think it was around 1.5, give or take. So I mean, that is there, but we would have to discuss how we want to fund that.
Madam CAO.
Through you, Mary, yes, the resolution of council was to bring back some financing options.
Mhm.
And it wasn't included in the budget, given the budget that we're putting forward, but certainly that is still the plan, to bring back financing options.
Okay. All right, carry on.
Okay. So we'll just jump right into tab 18. After the first green page, I think everybody has that, and then that starts right into the equipment. Just making sure everybody is ready. Okay, so the way I've prepared the budget this year is I broke it down into categories to try and make it a little bit more digestible. And we're going to start with the equipment first. What I have also done is I've just gone through and highlighted on my page that really not a lot is going to be changing over last year. But what I do want to bring to council's attention is, as per the report I brought to council, where we talked about staff wages, when you're looking over Public Works budget specifically, you'll see almost a reduction in every line item. And that is just because the wages have been pulled out of each line item. That was the discussion we had. So where I want to highlight major changes in the equipment portion of the budget, I'll highlight them here now. And then if there's any questions, we can go through that. So the only item I would like to highlight is under the 24 grader. It went from 6,000 to 8,180, and that's just to have repairs and a scheduled table adjustment. So nothing out of the norm. It's just an increase to do the table adjustment. Under the light duty pickup trucks, I'd like to note that the 2015 truck was pickup truck was surplus in 2025, so we no longer have it. But we have added 2 new pickups, which are the 26 half ton and the 26 3/4 ton at the very bottom of the list. Other than that, everything else is par for the course. We added our 3% for all of our line items for equipment repairs. And council may recall that we put that into play 2 seasons ago, where the equipment repair items generally stay the same year to year to stop the up and down flow, and then the tire purchases. Moving into the light duty trucks, which we have 2 of them There's just a small increase there, but nothing too extreme. Into the tandems, I have nothing highlighted. It's just annual increases for the equipment that we have. And then under trailers, same thing. There's no large increase in each one of those items. So if there's any questions under equipment, I'd be happy to answer that.
Councillor Barry.
Just, if you could just remind me of the tire replacement plan. I thought it was a reserve, but I see it's in a recost center, so I just wanted to know how that's.
Yep.
followed.
Yep, so this year I did remove it from the notes as a tire reserve because I know it caused some questions last year. It's not a reserve. We put away every year, we put away a set amount of money to replace the tires on the vehicles based on how many years we think we can get out of a set of tires. So every year we put that away, and if we spend it to replace a tire, then there's the budget there. If we don't, then it goes into the equipment reserve. And so as an example, if we have to replace $2,000 worth of tires this year on a truck, but we only have 1,000, we can still replace those tires because we take that other 1,000 from the reserve.
So it's sort of, it's budgeted in here. It's budgeted in here, but it's also any excess will then go back into equipment reserve.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this section? Councillor Richards.
Can you just refresh my memory on what you're doing at the Braylock pit and its necessity?
Yeah, so I can do that through you, Mayor, when we get down into that area. This was just the equipment that we went through. Is that okay? Okay. So then the next tab for Public Works is starting into the operations.
Bridges and culverts?
Yes, bridges and culverts is the first line item. Okay, everybody ready? So under bridges and culverts, you'll see there is a large increase there. What we'll be doing there is the annual inspection, like I said, of the OSIM, but we're also going to be looking at having an engineer come in and help us with our crib replacement. So there's a $20,000 fee for engineering to help us inspect the bridge, look over the bridge, and then help us with the tender, be the project manager for it, and then oversee the completion of the work that's planned for that bridge. We'll get down to it further, but the estimated cost for the crib replacement is around 80,000. The tender will dictate the actual cost. Under, again, all I've highlighted is basically the cost increase. So sweeping is another one. You'll see that there's a $3,000 increase on sweeping, and that will be for equipment, and that is for us to modify our current equipment to make one vehicle a sweeper and a water vehicle at the same time. So our sweeping operations, instead of having 3 pieces of equipment out sweeping, we should only be able to have 2. So that will allow us to cut down on the cost of equipment and utilize our staff in other areas.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just, I'm wanting to make sure I'm on the right tab. For bridges and culverts, you said there's an increase. And I just want, where I'm seeing it, looks like a decrease from last year.
Through you, Mayor. So again, you can't look at the bottom line in red because all the bottom lines of each budget GL will be a decrease because we've taken all the wages out of them. Yep. So where you'll see increases is in the actual line item for, say, equipment repair or contracted services and things of that nature. That's where you'll see the increases.
Okay.
Under project 3, sorry, resurfacing in tar and chip. So you'll see that we've gone from 540,000 last year, which I did bring a report to council to bring that up to just over 600,000. I brought it back to 600,000 again this year, and that is to complete the roads that are listed within the budget. These roads do fall under our asset management plan. Unfortunately, we don't hit all of our roads for the asset management plan annually, but we do get pretty close to it. And then I assess the roads in the spring and the fall, and I bring the best ones for the next year as well. And this would be a joint project with the county of Haliburton. The next highlighted area would be construction 3, which is listed as parking lots. So last year I had $15,000 in there for the conceptual drawings of the parking lot, potentially in the Big Hawk area. As council is aware, we are in discussions with MNRF, and the parking lot had not gone forward yet. So once we have the further discussions and know where we can potentially build a parking lot, then we'll have the engineer design a parking lot for us. And that will be brought back to council.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Thanks. Yeah, just in this general section, you spoke of council's decision to ask for financing to be looked at for widening of the Big Hawk Lake Road. Is that something that we could retrofit into this budget at a later date? Or, I mean, it would be ideal if we could get moving on that project this year. And I just wonder what the impact would be if we did find financing and we were able to move forward. There would be a repayment plan of some kind. So how does that square with our budget binder?
If I may, through you,
Go
Mayor,
ahead.
at this point, those costs are not reflected in here. And that would be in addition to the budget, even just if we decided to do a financing, the financing cost would have to be incorporated.
But I think we'd like maybe to see that information before we've finally approved the budget, just so we've got a point of comparison. The same with the points that you made last week about financing for the hangar roofs. Just so that we know, okay, what's the impact if we do this and what's the impact if we do that? So I think those couple of pieces of information we really would like to see before we are prepared to approve the budget. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we were able to find financing, which is of good terms for us for the Hawk Lake widening project, could we do that this year? Or are we past our ability to plan and implement for this year?
Through you, Mayor, if council so chooses to go ahead with the roadside parking on Big Hawk Lake, I would strongly suggest we do it in the fall, so that we're not disrupting the summer traffic, because as you know, the congestion up there would be terrible if we tried to do it in the summer. So certainly we would have enough time. I would strongly suggest to council that we wait until we find out where we can build parking lots. Because roadside parking only gives us 90 spots. A parking lot might give us 300 spots for the same amount of money. So I'm not 100% sure where we would end up with the parking lot, but I really think we can bring forward something because we already know it's 1.5 roughly to do the roadside parking. So we certainly can bring forward a budget to show what that would look like as an increase. But I would really want to wait to see what the parking lot cost looks like, because we may be able to do something, a little bit more efficient, better, or both. You may want to do both. I just want to throw that out there at you.
Go ahead.
Can we, through you, Mary, if it's okay, we'll keep a running list of things that council's looking for, and then we can bring that back.
Okay, that's great. And we do need to keep in mind that, I know that there's a concern on behalf of members of council that the level of the reserves that we've got. And we need to be very careful when thinking, okay, let's look at financing instead of use of reserves, that financing ultimately would cost us more money. Any other comments at this point in time? Okay, carry on.
Thank you. So the only other increases that I would like to note is just under plowing and sanding. Last year was pretty tough on our equipment, so there were some extra spending on replacement of blades and repairs. And this winter hasn't been any different. It's been quite a bit of snow for us so far. So there are some increases on costs for blades and repairs and things of that nature. And that's it for operations. Oh, I'm sorry. Under the Braylock pit, going back to your question. So what we're looking at doing for the Braylock pit is, so we've already worked a portion of it. And now we're done with one section of the Braylock pit. So what I would like to do is close that section off and have it closed off properly. So we'd be looking at having a company come in and basically reestablish the banks and clean up the area so that it can be closed off, and we no longer would be using that section. That's the work that's planned for Braylock pit.
Councillor Barry?
What's the cost associated, sorry, what's the cost associated with that?
We're estimating right now 40,000.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
It's a request not really for this budget binder, but just in general for our awareness moving forward. And I chatted with Jeannie about this too. There's a section, I think, in general administration for digital services, digital licenses, those sorts of things, which are costing us more year on year, and that's just cost of doing business. But we also have things that are pulled out, and especially for public works, AVL is in here, you know, the annual fee for AVL, and I saw mesh somewhere as well. And I think it would be helpful for council at some point just to have a sense of what is the cost of our digital life? Because we've got a line where some of them are banded together and then others where they're pulled out. And I think it's important for us to know, and I think it's important for the public to know, because this is how the world works now. But we have no control over subscription costs. So that would be really, I think, informative to see.
Madam CAO?
I do have that number. I know this was discussed last year by council, and so Michelle, our digital transformation coordinator, has put that together for me. And it's 127,335.
Well, and I mean, although that's a large number, one of the things that it does do is in many cases is to hopefully make life easier for our residents. Any other, Councillor Barry?
Just looking at that number, is that strictly for software and annual fees, or does that also include other IT expenses which are throughout the entire budget, such as phone replacements, computer replacements, and ongoing IT services?
Go ahead.
That is through you, Mary. That is strictly support and licensing.
Any other questions or comments? Carry on.
Just to help on that too, like I know the AVL for our equipment, we have two separate AVLs for our equipment, and one of them is specific for tracking our trucks and our plows up, plows down, and sanding. And I can tell you that the efficiencies of having that in the past 4 years or 3 years that we've had it is insane. Like it cuts down, I would say, probably just over an hour of each driver on their time on their route. With having that in there, it's been excellent to have and very efficient. The next item from Public Works would be general overhead, is the next tab or the next divider. So this is where you'll see a large increase at the top under wages. So we went from 275,000 last year to 1.26, and that's because all the wages were pulled from all the other line items, and that's where it's been placed. Just so you're aware of why that number has gone up. And we're expecting to see a lot of efficiencies with this style of budgeting, and we're looking forward to utilizing it. So what I wanted to highlight here was under supplies and materials. We went from 16,000 to 21,000, and that's just strictly because now we have 4 shops. This is going to be an interesting number to see how it turns out at the end of the year and for next year's budgeting, but we've added one 12,000 square foot building to the budget. So we're going to try and be as efficient as possible with that. As you mentioned just a minute ago, the telecommunications has gone up. So that's our Bell Internet. And then we have Starlink on the new garage, and we're being recommended by our IT department to have Starlink put on our maintenance garage, which is the old garage on North Shore Road. The internet there is not very good, and we're having issues with it, and they've recommended Starlink there as well.
Any idea what that transfer cost might be?
I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me now. I forget what it was. I don't know if Angie or Jeannie might be able to answer that.
I believe it's around $5,800 just to get it all set up.
Okay. Counselor Berry?
So part of that increase is for service, like the service without Starlink would be less. It is a sizable increase. It's almost double what it was last year.
So part of that, through you, Mayor, part of that is that we didn't have the fourth shop. So the fourth shop is also added in there on an annual service as well. And Starlink is there. We couldn't get Bell Internet to it. And then again, with the maintenance garage, the internet's just not working very well. Now that we have 2 offices in there and more staff working out of there, it's not keeping up.
Okay, any other questions? Carry on.
Okay, thank you. So like I mentioned earlier, training is another increase of $5,000, so from 25 to 30. And then health and safety has increased from 1,500 to 1,500 to 6,000. And then that's where we do our PPE for our staff. So helmets, gloves, glasses, things of that nature. And then I'm looking at installing safety boards, updating our safety boards at all of our shops with the new SDS regulations that came out and some other items. We want to clean those boards up and make them look neat and tidy. And then the Working Alone app that council is aware of, we now are utilizing that in Public Works. So there will be, or some of our Public Works staff are utilizing it right now. And then that's the increase for there. Moving further down, you'll see that we're looking at the purchases of the trucks, the tractor and everything like that coming from capital expenditures. And then this year we do have the loan payment and the loan interest payment added on to our budget as well. And that's for the new garage that we built.
Counselor Berry?
And so just kind of, we talked about this earlier, the 595, that's contribution to reserve, that's going in at the beginning of the beginning of the budget. And then if there's an excess on the tires, that type of thing, that's where it would come at the end of the year for end of the year reserves, but it would be sort of from that spot. Is that correct?
If I may, the contribution to reserves, this is the budgeted amount that we've got included. And the excess that Adam is speaking to with regard to the tires, and that would be going in addition to that, to the reserve. Also,
At the end.
yeah, at the end of the year. The other note that Adam, in his increases is the adding of the new shop. So there's a significant increase in insurance under roads for the new shop as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that is almost a $30-some thousand increase for us with the new shop. And that's it for overhead. If there's any other questions?
Any other questions in this section? Hearing none?
Okay.
Carry on.
So the next tab would be tab 19, Airport Committee. The Airport Committee tab is pretty straightforward. Annually, we put in the $2,500. council can recall, the last meeting minutes, we discussed the EOI for the food truck, which will be coming back to council with the results of that and further discussion on the food truck. Yeah, unless there's any questions, it's pretty straightforward.
Councillor Berry?
So as the budget stands right now, the food truck is not in the budget.
That's correct.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I think a question more for the treasurer then. During the fly-ins, there are donations that are received. Where are they found in this under revenue? Because they're not here, but I didn't think where they might be.
If I may, the donations in that are transferred to the airport committee reserve at the end of the year.
Okay.
So they actually land in the committee reserves.
So,
Councillor Berry?
oh, sorry.
So those would be seen on the next tab, on the next page, correct? Under other fees and donations? No.
Through you, Mayor, in your reserve sheet at the very beginning, under airport committee projects, there is as a project balance as of December 31st, 2026, there's $14,641. So any donations, any money raised or anything like that throughout the year would just potentially increase that unless they utilize some of it.
Madam Treasurer?
So we don't actually traditionally budget for donations and or revenues because we won't know what the revenues will be, given there could be rain or cancellations of the events or whatever. So we have not traditionally budgeted for those revenues or donations. At the end of the year, once they come in, we consider the expenditures and balance everything out, and then whatever's left at the end, the surplus, then is transferred to the airport committee reserve.
Go ahead.
The surplus for the entire budget item.
Yeah, for the airport
For the
committee
airport
cost center,
committee,
yes.
just like the museums. as
Yep.
well. But just so we have a bit of an idea on the white page, without any color, it does say that in December, there was $5,000 and $3,000 in fees and donations. Is that a ballpark of what would be put into the reserve annually?
Yes, basically those, it's $9,000 that we did in revenues last year. Take off the expenditures beyond the 2,500 that is budgeted within the levy. The remaining amount is the $5,200 that went to the reserve last year. So it's about $5,000 a year that is going to the reserve.
And you will see that the airport committee is going to put, a greater emphasis on trying to get sponsors. So, I mean, you can see that the numbers that we're seeing for the committee are quite different than they've been in the past. And they're doing a pretty good job in fundraising. Did you have a question, Deputy Mayor Dayan? Are you good with that, Councillor Berry?
Yeah.
Carry on.
So the next one here is the airport development plan. There's really not much to discuss right now. We've added in 125,000 for the development plan for us to go through and have a consultant come in and revise the current plan and send it back out. It's kind of where we're sitting at it with right now.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Do you think it's feasible that we might be able to see the completion of the plan in this calendar year, or do you think that's pushing it a little bit?
Through you, Mayor, no, I think we would be able to see the completion of a plan. Certainly, if council approves the go ahead with it, then I can sit with the CAO and we can go through the plan that was presented to us and then send that back out and get our consultant to put not a rush on it, but here's your project for the year. And I think we'd have it back in a decent time.
Okay, great.
That'd be great.
If there's-
Go ahead.
Just if there's no other questions, then on to airport itself. So
Actually, go ahead.
Just before we move on, we've chatted about it at council a couple of times, but I wonder if we could, I don't know if a specific direction has to be given, but I think it would be so valuable to understand the ins and outs of our reserves for airport development, where, where have they gone? And council has made all of those decisions, I understand that, but just a reminder of how we've been using that. Also, and Jeannie and I were chatting about this before, when we took some out of the reserve for the refurb of the Dorset Recreation Centre, I had it in my mind that that was a loan and it was going to be repaid with interest. And I just wonder how, how that's being refunded. And on what basis and what interest but it's a while ago now and my memory is kind of foggy. So I wonder if we could determine that we would really like to see a report with the ins and outs for the Airport Development Reserve.
I'm glad you raised that because I've several times mentioned the concern that it seems to me that previously there were accounts for airport development and airport itself or airport operations. And it seems to me that although we've been socking away, every year and part of the budget money into airport development, which to me is, true development is new construction development of the lots, new businesses coming to the airport. And it seems like out of that airport development fund, we've been taking out items that would be or should be considered to be operational as opposed to airport development. So, at some point in time, I'd like us to have a discussion about that. Now, that's not necessarily going to change the budget, but it may change how we move forward and what's considered airport operations or maintenance and or airport development itself. Go ahead.
If
Go
I
ahead,
may, yeah, so just really high level, certainly we've utilized the airport development reserve for funding projects that were, I want to say unseen, like we're unprepared for, some items that came up. So although we could create the airport reserve and start putting money in it, of course, there just wasn't enough there based on the projects that were coming up. So I do appreciate council allowing the airport to utilize that development funding reserve to help offset those costs. And I just wanted to throw that out there, that most of that has gone to the tree project, the asphalt project, and then other items that were there.
Which are, in my estimation, operational costs. If it came down to, okay, so we get an airport development plan, towards the end of the year, and it suggests that we move forward with, certain aspects of development, and we won't have the money to do it. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, and I think what the last couple of years of expenditures has highlighted is, and we have chatted about this when we talked about the development plan, is that we seem to see the airport over here and development opportunities over here, mainly with regards to the lot. But I think it would be worthwhile if the plan looked at the full airport world. How are we financing all of these things, and how might one help to offset the other? Or they are linked. So even though we're looking at economic development principally with the airport development plan, we see it's not entirely divorced from the operational side, and it would be really helpful if the consultant sort of looked at the whole world together, even when giving us mainly feedback on the economic development part.
Excuse me, I don't disagree with you that, that would be a good discussion to have, but it's my impression that the discussions that have taken place so far with the consultant and what we might see coming to us later on do not look at it from that perspective. Not to say that we shouldn't be.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Maybe I might need a little bit better understanding, because from what I'm hearing you say, I think that the development plan would do that. It would take into consideration aviation in general, how it reflects on our airport and what we can do to develop the current lots and the things we have. Because what we've done is we've actually gone to an aviation consultant. Somebody who's well known in the field, knows the industry in and out, for that foresight that, you know, us as a small aerodrome, we can only add so much information of our experience. We look to an aviation company to get even more broader reach to help our development plan. So I think it will do what you're looking for.
Great. Councillor Berry, then Councillor Richards.
Two questions, clarification, other fees, that is the hangar rentals, is that correct, or the M&R lease?
It's the M&R lease
The M&R lease, and where are the hangar rentals captured?
right below it. The 125.
Sorry?
No, that's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If I may, the airport rentals, the hangar, they are on the operational tab,
Yep.
the airport proper tabs, not the development. The development, M&R monies go to the development fund and then rentals go to the airport.
Okay. Where is?
Yeah, under the airport.
Sorry, I'm
Tab
going-
21.
So
I thought
other
those were-
fees.
The M&R.
This is airport renting leases. If you look airport development, that's.
Got it, okay, thank you. And then my next question is. Hypothetically, if the county were to kick in some money for the use of the municipal airport that the entire county uses. Where would that revenue be captured, and is that something that we can pursue? It seems like we always talk about this and it's like, well, the county has passed their budget, but I don't think we've actually fully done a deep dive on that.
The county has passed their budget and, you know, it's somewhat disappointing in some ways because they used to contribute at least a minimal amount of money towards the operation of the airport. It wasn't a lot of money. I think it was $10,000. But there have been and will be, I think you'll see scheduled over the next period of time, some discussions with the CAO, the Economic Development Officer at the county, and myself to see how we can work together going forward. But there would be, I wouldn't think there'd be any expectation of funding coming into our budget more. How are we going to go forward? How are we going to maybe promotional marketing? That's that sort of work at this point in time. Another question? Did I see your hand, Councillor Richards? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
True, county's passed its budget and it doesn't, I'm not optimistic that it would respond favorably to a simple request for money for this. But it is a compelling question when it comes to the airport development report. And who knows, there might be some information in there about who uses the airport, why do they use it, what is the market for the airport, information that could provide compelling evidence for the fact that it is a county-wide used asset that could further our conversations in the future about all of that. But for this year, it's locked. There's no.
Adam?
To further on that conversation, council may recall that I did bring a report to council about the airport and how it affects the entire community, because we were receiving, on average, we receive a couple emails a year about how the airport doesn't support the county or other people in the municipality. And we wanted to put something together to show that it does. And although you may not have an airplane and you may not go to the airport to fly, your health services, your emergency services, M&R, all those things utilize. There's quite a few entities that use the airport on a regular basis that affect everybody countywide, which is really important. And that report has gone to the consultants so they understand what it is that our airport does and what it's provided. Yep.
Councillor Richards?
I mean, we're kind of going into the next tab a little bit, but Like, it seems to me we're utilizing the reserve from the airport development plan for infrastructure at the airport. We get that. So is the airport buildings and infrastructure not included in our asset management plan? It's completely isolated from that?
Through you, Mayor, so the buildings would be captured, or are captured in the asset management plan, yes.
So we don't have enough funds in our asset management plan to cover these repairs, though.
So the way our asset management, through you, Mayor, sorry, the way our asset management plan would work is that under each line item or each department item, they would have their own reserve, like Roads Garage has its own Roads Garage reserve, Community Center has its own Community Center reserve. The airport essentially should have or could have had a airport reserve that we could have utilized for operational repairs, whether that be the lights or the hangars. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and that these repairs came up, so we utilized the development plan money versus pulling it from, another big reserve that we had somewhere. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps. And from what I understand on Hangar D, we wouldn't be going through with anything on that unless we had a expression of interest of a business that wants to use that building? Or is it meant to also come out of the airport development reserve?
Well, I think that would, through you, Mayor, I think that would depend on council's discussion. Hangar D is a unique project for us, unfortunately. We did an expression of interest. We put that out and we got nothing back. So we put it out again in hopes. And we'll see what happens when it comes back. It's a tough project and there's a lot of moving parts in it. So you'll see a report come back to council after this next EOI closes. And there'll be discussion there on how we can move forward with that building, because we do have some ideas and some plans to potentially move it forward. And then funding from there, we'd have to discuss on what the options are and how we can fund that.
Councillor Barry?
I believe I read that as far as the capital expenditure goes, it's for hangar E, F, G, H, and for roof repairs, but was there also not a component of that was for siding repairs as well?
Through you, Mayor, yes. Yeah, a portion of it was the roof, and then we would include some siding repairs, yes.
And has it been discussed of that project being spread out over 2 years instead of one large project?
So through you, Mayor, I've thought about this and we've had the discussion around it, and it's like any project that it doesn't matter whether it's airport or Parks and Rec, it's irrelevant. It's the more you spread it out, the more it's going to cost us. And that's simply because of travel time, setup and takedown. The idea of this project is, if council approves it, is that there's 4 buildings. So we would do one building at a time, not all 4 at the same time. But it was the plan to try and do them all at the same time within the same year, so that they're all done and there's no extra costs carried over from year to year. Because that's, not only do we see that in an additional cost of the contractor, but staff time, right? You're now pigeonholing a staff member to have to work on that project again for the next year, which, something on the plate for 2027 has to come off or can't go on, let's say, because staff are tied up with it. So it was my plan to, if council approves it, to do it all in 1 year, and then it's done and over with.
Well, and there is some risk associated with leaving, some of it for subsequent years as well, not just risk, but liability as well. If something was, if there was, too much of a leak and something was damaged in the building that somebody's paying a lease payment for, we've got a problem. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Are we on to that tab then? Are we on to airport?
Might as well move over to it.
Yeah, sure.
Great. So the amount of money for other fees, which is rental of hangars, presumably, Would we, I guess it sounds like they wouldn't be out of their hangar for very long. I was sort of expecting to see a reduction because presumably we wouldn't be charging them rent for the time they need to vacate the hangar for us to do the work on the hangar. But there is an increase, in fact, a nice increase in the fees. So is that due to something else?
I can answer that, Janie, if you like, through you, Mayor. So I did speak with our finance department about this, and we didn't do any discounts. We didn't do anything. We just left it as it is with a normal annual increase. And the reason for that is because we didn't know where we were going to end up and how this project was going to come forward. So once we know exactly how much the project is going to cost us and the time it's going to take to replace the roof, once we know the whole scope of the project, then we'll start looking at whether we offer a discount for next year. We wanted to see what it looked like, how much work could be done without disrupting the tenants, and what kind of disruption it would be for the tenants. From there, we can measure out what that looks like, and then we could, like I said, offer a discount for next year maybe. There are a couple options, but it was felt that if we left it the same, then it didn't disrupt this year without knowing exactly what those costs were going to be.
Go ahead.
And then with regards to the cost of the project, does the cost include, or maybe it's not even necessary, a temporary location for them to put their planes and their assets while we work on their hangar? Or is it up to them to think about removals of assets and return and what happens in the intervening weeks or months or however long it takes?
Again, that's still part of the project. Once we know the full scope and how long it's going to take for the roof to be removed and all the work that needs to be done, we'll know timeframes, and then we'll be able to address the question that you just answered there, because we may be able to park them outside for the 4 days it takes. We may have to look at another option. If we look at the Quagama Lake roof, which is a little bit smaller than these roofs, it took a week. By the time they started pulling the roof off and put it back on, it was roughly a week. I think the whole project took 3 weeks, but the steel off, steel on was only 5 days.
Councillor Berry.
Do we have any idea of lifespan of this project?
As far as like if we replace the roof, how long it should last?
I didn't think we'd be repairing them where we're at right now, so I'm curious to know what the longevity is.
Yes. So through you, Mayor, yes, when we look at projects, and you would have seen that by now with me, when we look at projects, I look for stuff that's going to last as long as we can possibly get out of it because of how much everything costs. I personally don't want to do this project again, and I got 15 years left, so I don't want to have the next person have to do this project. So when we look at the new garage and the reno project, we increase the gauge of steel on the roof to allow for a longer longevity of the roof structure. Also, with the weather we've been getting, hail, things like that can damage the roof. So we look at a thicker steel, and that's what we've done here. As we're going to be proposing a thicker steel for the roof. As for the longevity of it, how long it's supposed to last, we'll know that once the tender documents are put out, because each steel manufacturer will have their own date, if you will.
From what I understand, in discussion with Adam, when we were building the hangars, in order to try and reduce the cost of the hangars at the time, we did make a conscious decision to use a lighter gauge of steel. And this is a result of trying to save money in early stages where we're now paying for it. So, it doesn't always pay to, try and I don't want to say be cheap or save costs. In the end, it can result in something less than a positive.
If I may add to that, I just want council to understand that this was a decision, yes, by council because you approved it, but there were some other factors in there, engineering and contractors. So please don't take it to heart that, or anybody watching this, that council made a bad decision. You made the best decision you could with the information that you were given. And I know that you're trying to save money for the public, and of course, that's our number one plan, but you're correct. Sometimes we do have to look past that and try to look for longevity, which, you know, that's something that I strive for, and I've been supported through council, and I appreciate that. But I just wanted to add that in there, that try not to take that on the chin too hard, because you had some other people involved that, you know, had the thought process that it would work, and just unfortunately, it did not.
Go ahead.
And it was funded provincially and federally as well, initially, was it not? Which is unfortunate. We don't have that luxury right now, so that's part of the reason why it has to come out of the
Mhm.
reserve. Correct?
Or, you know, in further investigation, possibly through a loan, but you know, I suspect it probably will ultimately come out of reserves. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I do get that, and I do get that it costs more to borrow money than to take from reserves, but I'm really adamant that I'd like to see that, you know, that those loan options. These are expenses that do not directly support the taxpayer, and that's an awfully big price tag for the taxpayer. And if we could, you know, if we could find a loan which is then repaid, you know, over many, many years via the, you know, the folks who are renting it, I think it's just a fairer deal for the taxpayer. So even if it costs us more, it's a very serious consideration in my mind, that we consider that.
And we have given direction in that regard. Councillor Barry?
And there's no such thing as like infrastructure funding that could help pay for some of it? Regards to other granting opportunities or any other thing that could come down the road or has been looked at currently?
Madam CAO?
We have looked high and low to try and find funding opportunities. There may be in the future, but currently there is not.
And if I can add to that, at the last two council meetings before, I did bring forward a report to talk about AMCO, who we are going to allow, you know, speak on our behalf to go after funding. Because right now there just really isn't much for us in that way. Unfortunately, we can't wait for that. That's the sad part about it, because, you know, staff do a really good job of trying to look for funding and be shovel ready for these types of projects. And this has been one that's been a bit trying for us. But there's just no funding out there because it is kind of a unique situation with the airport.
Any other questions or comments in this section? All right, if you want to go ahead.
So I guess just to finish up with the airport tab is that we are looking at fuel purchasing, an increase there. We did spend quite a bit last year on fuel, which you know is good for us for the fuel sales that we had, but unfortunately for those that needed M&R and things of that nature, for the fires and stuff that took place. Overall, there's not much else to talk about here. You will see there's some inspections under other services, but that cost did go down. And yeah, that's it for airport.
Everybody good?
The next line item will be, our tab will be 22 generator. There really isn't much going on under the generators, which is a good thing. You can see that we have an annual services that we do on the generators, and then we do put away $5,000 annually for contributions to reserve for replacement of them.
Any questions on generators? Hearing none?
The next tab is 23 streetlights. There's no change there.
Comments? Okay, next tab.
Next tab is 24 maintenance coordinator. So the only real change here to make note of would be that we've increased the small equipment repair and maintenance to purchase scaffolding equipment. We currently have scaffolding in-house. Our staff are fully trained to utilize it, but we do notice that we do need some extra pieces for it. So we're proposing to purchase those pieces this year. And this is just, we use our scaffolding mostly in the DRC, especially the larger stacks, but it is utilized in other areas. And then the other increase here would be the iPad replacement.
Questions? Councillor Barry?
Sorry, just backing up onto the generator, where does that? I believe it used to be a title reserve in our reserve sheet. However, I don't see it in there. Is it captured under something else?
Yes, it's under emergency reserves.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next, go ahead.
Yeah, I was chatting to Jeannie about this earlier too, more I think for the CAO and for Jeannie, but there are a couple of positions here that are effectively about identifiable individuals, and I wonder if we still need to hold those out as individual cost centers, or whether they can go the same route as Public Works and sort of amalgamate wages, et cetera, into one cost center, so that we're not basically looking at one individual's wages and how much benefits they used, et cetera, every year. Do you think that we could do that? I think Jeannie was saying that the origin of one of the new positions required its own cost center at the beginning, but I didn't know if that was still the case.
Certainly through you, Mayor, if the treasurer thinks that we can do it easily enough, I don't see any problem with it.
Well, maybe we can have something come back to us with respect to that. Okay. I guess we're on to the Dorset Museum.
Yep, tab 25. So annually, the Dorset committee, the museum committee provides their budget to me. So overall, there really wasn't much of a change year over year for them. Small increase in some areas and a small decrease in others where we are realizing that we're not spending that money. Overall, it's pretty straightforward. They're looking at new door signage, new outdoor signage. And then they're also going to be looking at doing the gazebo. And yeah, that's it.
I'm wondering why the Lake Bay's contribution is so much less than it was in the past. Go ahead.
Again, with the wages then being moved to Public Works, the Lake of Bay's wage or portion is based on the expenditures that are before you on the sheet here. So at the end of the year, that amount will change once we add the wages in from Public Works. But based on
That
the
Lake of Bays would be contributing to.
yes, they would be. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Barry?
I believe it was talked about in regards to the building behind the museum being repaired, possibly lifted or replaced entirely. I just wonder where that discussion lives in the budget.
Through you, Mayor, it's not in the budget for this year. There are, again, a lot of moving parts and a lot of projects on the go. This one specifically is going to be a tough decision. And with everything else that was going on, it just didn't hit the priority for this year.
Go ahead.
In regards to that, but I can understand there's competing projects and priorities. By not doing anything, is it deteriorating to a point that we should be doing something, or is it fine to sit at a standstill for another year or two?
Yeah, so it's nothing, there's no environmental impacts that are causing the building to deteriorate anymore at a quicker rate than it already is. So no, there's nothing there. We just need to bring something forward to council to discuss how we want to move forward with that project, because it's another large project for council's consideration.
Is there, if I could ask, is there any idea when we might hear from the college, whether the gazebo project can go ahead or not?
I would have to ask our project manager, Brian, that question.
So at this point, we're looking at the first week of March, where we may have some insight as to whether the timber frame program is going to be viable at the School of Art and Design. So I'll be in contact with Aaron Lynch at the college, sort of at that point in time, and yeah, see where we're at.
Okay, thanks.
No.
Councillor Berry.
Just in regards to the other building, the museum does have a sizable reserve. So any project that would potentially go through there, could that be allocated towards some of that? Is that a discussion?
For you're talking about for the storage building?
Yes.
Through you, Mayor, certainly if council so chooses to spend the reserve, then certainly. Like not to get too in depth in it, but the moving parts for that project are accessibility. You know, you're talking about lifting the building and putting a foundation under it, and there's no accessible access to it, nothing. And, you know, utilizing, it's hard to get equipment in there. I mean, I'm a capable person to lift something and carry it in, but even for me, it's uncomfortable. I wouldn't recommend fixing it. To my knowledge, there's no, and I've asked this question, there's no historical value other than I believe it was a cabin at one time for something to do with the Frost Center, if I'm not mistaken. So I wouldn't be suggesting we go in and just smash it down and get rid of it. But I think for storage purposes of what the museum wants to utilize it for, a ground level accessible building with a garage door to open and carry things in safely would be more ideal. So essentially that's what we would have to look at, doing.
Is that something that you want put in the parking lot for consideration?
No, not at this time. I mean, it's pretty, there probably is nowhere near enough money in the reserve, but just planning for the future. The museum is one of our highly successful entities that seems to be given a lot of donations, and fundraising is definitely in their forte. So just looking at the reserve there and where the project sits in regards to priorities.
Good, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, like I said, it certainly is on my list. It hasn't just completely fallen off the table by any means. So if this year, depending on how this year goes with the projects that we have, and if there's time to work on it, I'll certainly be pulling it out and putting more time and effort into it.
Deputy Mayor Day.
Just now that we're on the topic of that shed, it harkens back to the conversation we had with Chris and Parks and Rec and new storage at the Dorset Tower. As you're considering it, even if it's not for this year, but if you're reflecting on designs, I think it would be really great, even though it's kind of hidden and around the back, to see if we can cost effectively design something that can be consistent with the heritage look of the space. So it isn't like a brand new building. Because when you go to look at the offerings of the museum at the back, you do catch sight of it. You know, it is visible. And if it's to be replaced, if we could do something that is at least not inconsistent with the look of the property, I think that would be just great.
Certainly, I'll put that into the consideration when we're doing it.
And I guess there's cost considerations that have to be thought about, and I don't disagree. It'd be nice to have something that fits in with the whole ambiance of the property. Anything else on the Dorset Museum? Okay, on to the Stanhope Museum.
So tab 26. Again, this is another project where they've provided me with their budget. A lot of it is pretty straightforward from year over year. And then it'll be municipal staff that will be painting the building, the exterior of the building.
So, and the fact that there's no wages, it's because of wages all being blocked together.
Yes, that's correct. At the end of the year, my plan is to come back to council and we'll be able to give a better idea, you know, like 20% of staff was put in this area and 10% of staff went to this area. And then we'd be able to show exact numbers of what the staff have been doing and where they've been working.
It's interesting to see that, I mean, it's one thing to talk about painting the building. I wonder how much discussion there's been about the idea of artwork in the windows and what that might cost. Is there any notion about the costs associated with that?
I haven't heard a final cost, but I know it is something the committee is continually discussing. We're looking for probably a few more members at the table to have a greater conversation. But it is a project that they would like to proceed with, whether that be a call for entry or there's also been talk if having a mural done and it was out of a financial if it was too much money, there's other discussions about having some possible photographs or historic items sort of made into more of a installation for the windows if it was not a mural. So there is sort of
I think we're all
The
excited about seeing
Yeah.
something done there. I just wanted to make sure that we're kind of covering what cost, whatever cost might be.
just in the last line item in regards to the replacement of the computers. The committee didn't have a ton of warning of this and it's that this would have to be done. Or at least that was what was presented at the last meeting. And it just kind of goes, I have it written down in several cost centers about the replacement of computers. And is there, these are being recommendations from IT. And it's a sizable amount of money throughout the entire municipality. And my question is, what is happening with the old computers? And I would think there would be, by no means an IT specialist, but there would be higher levels of risk in different departments. Does the museum fit a high risk area that needs to have a computer replaced every 5 years?
You want to respond to that?
Through your mayor, yes. I mean, as council knows, IT has a computer replacement program. These particular computers were purchased with funding. They are in the computer world old. And I believe they are older than 5 years. What happens is that once they're past a certain age, and I'm not going to profess to know it all, but what I understand is that the updates can no longer be installed in these computers, which creates a risk. And so that's why they're recommending replacement of them. So, I mean, certainly council can direct, however, and to your question about where they end up in the at the county with the rest of the old computers that no longer can be updated or used.
One of the discussions at the museum was that, you know, you see all the time on Facebook and in the newspaper and just other community groups that have, you know, calls for secondhand computers and there's school programs and there's, you know, there's a computer shortage probably in other areas. And wondered if there's any sort of donation policy or purchase policy that could be done so that they don't just
I think there has been a policy worked on, or they're working on a policy for availability to save staff. But the county has got a partnership, or has had a partnership with particularly Point in Time, where they have donated equipment to Point in Time for families who don't have access to equipment even, or internet. You know, so there's been some consideration there as well.
It's unfortunate that these computers specifically were initially funded from a grant. It's much like the generator, where now we're having to replace them not through a grant.
Just to further that, like, we do repurpose computers wherever possible. Like, we do have training computers that where they don't have access to the network. That's where the risk becomes high. Where there would be access to, you know, municipal financial information, all those things. Where, you know, if it's just a computer that needs, you know, access to the internet for training or things like that, we repurpose those all the time. The computer that sits at that desk is a repurposed computer. But those are low risk deployments. So anywhere where it needs to have access to the network, it's highly recommended that they get replaced.
I see that there are 2 computers associated with the Stanhope Museum. It looks like 2 computers. Where are they?
And my understanding through your mayor is that there were 3.
They
And
are-
again, this is pulling it out of my memory from quite a number of years ago now. That I know the chair of the Stanhope Museum, I believe, has 2, and I think one lived in Oxton at one time.
Councillor Richards.
I can answer that only because it was discussed in the meeting.
Thank you.
They're in the basement.
All of them?
Yeah, one of them's not a laptop, it's a desktop. So there's 2 laptops and the laptops are used. So yes, essentially the desktop and the laptop are used by the chair. And then the other laptop is used by a volunteer that comes in to help. There actually was a 3rd one, but they've decided they don't need that. So it's down to just the 2 laptops and 1 desktop. But I also want to say I actually did follow up also from the meeting with Mike March about where our computers go once they're no longer in service, and he did confirm that they are donated. And actually the museum had asked specifically because there was a call out on Facebook about Central Food Network looking for 3 laptops to help people with tax returns. And Mike had seen it himself and was actioning, trying to get them to Central Food Network. So that was good news to hear.
If may I ask a question? Councillor Richards, are you aware if those are Algonquin Highlands computers that are being donated? Because I'll admit I didn't know that. And I would have
Yeah, it
assumed,
would be nice to know.
I would assume Algonquin Highlands would have had to approve that.
As far as I know, it's all of like the whole counties that goes back to the county that they then, if they cannot be repurposed to another department, they're donated into the community to various programs.
You might want to have a discussion with Mr. March. Any other, oh, go ahead.
No, just it's interesting to clarify, if the computers we're discussing are the ones that were used for the genealogical program, and one indeed did live up in Oxton for a while, those computers are 9 or 10 years old at this stage. Yeah.
Definitely out of date. Okay, any other comments or questions about that? We can move on to the next tab, which I think is library.
Tab 27. So the increases here on this item would be under building property repair. So the replacement of the rear door And then some lighting replacement in the basement. And then the internet and the lift license. And the maintenance of the accessible lift that we have there. Other than that, everything else is pretty much straightforward from last year.
And what specifically is the contribution from reserves being used for? Those items that you just talked about?
That is correct. Let me just take a quick look here to make sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Counselor Barry?
This was one reserve that I had sort of highlighted in regards to the contribution, or sorry, other services. The lift, would it be considered, sorry, I think I'm looking at the wrong one. I think I'll hold this conversation for the Stanhope Rec Center. Because this is just the licensing. This is not the actual lift. The lift is an older project.
Yes.
Sorry, disregard.
That's okay.
I have lift written here in a couple places, so just disregard that.
Okay, so on to the next tab. That's still under your responsibility?
The next tab would be 28
Oh,
cemeteries.
yeah, right, okay.
So for Public Works here, what we'd be looking at, and we've been working with the clerk and deputy clerk, is to put in a shed at one of the sites to store equipment. That there's a shed there now that's falling apart. It's in disrepair. So we'd be looking at replacing that. And other than that, it's status quo from year over year. For maintenance and repairs.
Any questions, Deputy Mayor Dave?
So then remind me, where do special projects like the columbarium, the spreading gardens, where do they live?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. So those products, Council may recall I brought forward a report in the fall that we're going to prepare to apply through care and maintenance. So we have the trust account that we have to legislatively contribute every time we sell a plot. We're going to look to borrow from there. That would come with a business plan, because for every scattering right or columbarium niche, we'd have to repay that portion back to the trust. But it would mean we wouldn't deplete our operating. But essentially what funds are operating for cemetery comes out of the plot sales, the interest earned off the care and maintenance. We can use all of that. And then I just wanted to note too, this year, as council also may recall, we received a donation towards the columbarium at St. Stephen's. So new to the reserve sheet is an established cemetery reserves, which is just general. We have one that we contribute for the 12-mile the vault that we contribute $752 every year, so that will maintain. But we'll use the general, start kind of stocking away funds in the event that our operating of the cemetery becomes low at any point. I don't see that happening because we're looking at expanding, so the scatterings would continue to create a revenue. But in 2026, if Public Works can, then we could potentially fund the shed, any of those capital things through the general reserve that we created this in 25.
So is there, I'm sorry, maybe I missed something there, but is there a separate cost center, or should there be a separate cost center that identifies revenues for plot sales?
No, so through you, Mayor. So that just that comes when we sell plots. So we can certainly bring the information to council, but that's it separate from the budget.
Madam CAO?
Through you, Mayor, just to further clarify that, cemetery has its own bank account, and council sees that audited statement each year, and that it audits the account itself.
Okay.
It's
great.
not included.
Forgot about that, sorry. It looks like that might be it for you.
That is, it might not seem like it, but it's a busy year. And then you'll see me back again when Chris Card comes up to talk about the facilities, as I manage the facility and Chris manages what's inside them. So you'll see me back then.
Okay, sounds good. I think maybe we'll take a 20-minute break. So back at 10 to 11. to the first day of our budget deliberations. Next up is Environmental Services. And good morning, Melissa.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll just give you the general overview and then we can go through individual sites. As always, a thanks to, council and all of our staff here for their support. Waste is not an issue that everybody particularly enjoys, but I have to say council and staff have been great. And I have to give a special thanks to our residents and visitors, because I think in Algonquin Highlands, we really have a very dedicated and concerned resident base who are just trying to do the right thing always. And I think they do a really great job. So I have to give contentious when I'm speaking to other people in the province, other municipalities. Quite often I hear they're very impressed with what we can do here, and given a very small system, the services that we have and how great people are about utilizing them to the absolute best. So thank you. And a special thanks also to our contractors. We have a great support services with our contractors. Not only the services they provide, but the support they give to our operations. So my kudos to them. Just to start it, just a couple of notes of things that you'll see that'll come through sort of on each site. And that's some of the projects that were deferred from 2025. With the time that it took dealing with the transition of the Blue Box program, a couple of projects that were more on the operations side got deferred. So I do want to get those underway in 2026. And with that is the sort of digital transformation. Currently, most of the reporting and sorry, I forgot. Anyways, is done on paper, and we want to move that to a digital where we can get much quicker information and we can get a lot more information out of the data that we collect. So that's part of the project for this year. You'll see sites or signage and site improvements at each site as well. In our general budget, not a big change in our revenue. Our compensation from extended producer responsibility programs has sort of stabilized now. We've got the Blue Box program transition. That's a contract. We have contracts for all the materials we collect, and the amount of materials we're collecting year to year are fairly consistent. Includes our Waste Wizard, which is a shared service, and planning to continue on that with Minden, Dysart, and Highlands East. We have added in some revenue, which also impacts our expenses, to host a training course for landfill operator basics. It's an operator course, which is great, and the organizing training is putting together a special program, which they call a hybrid. So it'll be a little bit focused on smaller depot operations where we do everything. So right from a bit of hazardous waste to transfer station management to landfilling. So that's a great opportunity. And just to note, we have increased the number of household hazardous waste events from 3 last year to 4 this year. And there's no increase to the budget to do that. There's been some cost reductions in our mobilization. So that's allowed that to move forward. And moving on to the Dorset transfer station, one of the things included in the budget for Dorset is some site work, which is regrading and some attention to the drainage there. These are just sort of cyclical maintenance that need to be done, cleaning out our ditching and grading so that we have proper drainage and grading of the site. It is worth noting that we have a little bit more in our budget for the compactors and electrical systems, which is our solar system. They're getting a little bit older and need a little bit more tender loving care these days. So eventually, a couple of years, we're probably looking at replacing some of those systems, but not yet. And the other is just some additions to our containment of our collection areas, and to make it a little bit easier to manage materials, construction, shingles, metal. So adding some blocks that are used to build bunkers there. The Hawk landfill is closed now. Just maintenance operations there, keeping an eye on everything is stable. We do need to replace some of the fencing there that's been damaged because of a couple tree limbs that had fallen on it. And just the gate was a reused, quite old gate and has seen better days. So whether we can repair it or replace it, that's included in the budget there. For Maple Lake, there's sort of two infrastructure projects there. One is replacing our temporary storage area with a more permanent structure. So we have a temporary, portable garage canopy there. It requires a fair bit of maintenance to keep snow off it, and it's not the most stable structure to have for the area that it is. So looking at a permanent storage area at that site, and it does need to be outdoor storage because there are some materials there that we don't want to have in a contained space because we don't have the opportunity to put a ventilation system in. So outdoor storage is what we're looking at there. Regular scale maintenance and calibration, those are annual expenses. And then again, like Dorset, just some grading and maintenance of the drainage systems, because that's a fairly new site there. Some of those are just sort of dealing with the shifting of things and the movement of soil as it becomes compacted that's happened since the site was built. So those will get addressed. And part of that as well is creating a loading area for construction and demolition, which is a difficult area to manage. A lot of materials and they get it gets muddy and difficult to manage. So a concrete pad there so that it'll be easier for people to offload materials as well as easier for equipment to manage those materials. We'll have less soil in our materials that we're shipping out and hopefully less time in managing them. For Oxtongue, Oxtongue has a big project in that we are at our limit of waste in our current active landfilling area. And we do need to open up a new area, and that involves some tree clearing at the south side of the site. So it's not a new landfill expansion or anything like that. It's just opening up an area that's already part of our approved limit of waste. So that's a fairly large project there. And along with that is just a bit of site reconfiguration. And again, like Dorset, putting in some bunkers to manage materials and keep our material collection areas better contained so they're easier to manage. For Pine Springs, not a lot changed there. Installing a new propane heater in our attendance shed. We've had all kinds of issues with damage from mice, unfortunately. So looking at a different model there that will hopefully address that as opposed to side venting, going to a chimney. We have the issue of mice crawling in the side vent. So going to a chimney can eliminate that. We've been having fairly substantial costs each year for maintenance, having someone come in and repair. So to stop that, replace with a different model. For the McClintock Lagoon, hopefully we will finally get around to getting the property surveyed and an appraisal for the potential purchase for expansion into trenches there at some point. This is sort of the final step in being able to purchase that land from the Crown and then to have it in reserve essentially for future development. So the budget just includes the survey and appraisal of that land, and then looking after that at whether we want to actually go ahead with a purchase. And that site as well, we had new fencing installed in 2019, I believe it was, and it's just settled a bit. So we just need some realignment of some of the gates to get that working. And the Environment and Stewardship Committee is just the annual sort of maintenance costs, just regular sort of activities. Anything that's a project that would come up there would be funded from reserve, and so that's just for supplies and materials and that sort of thing. And just moving on to each sites. We did do a new summary this year. So the first report that you have is just a summary. So that's all of the sites included in one. The wages that you see in there do not include any of the wages for township public works operators and staff and maintenance. That's just the admin part of the budget. So all of the others are combining all of these sites. And the reason that's there is just to give you an idea, those costs, even though they're spread amongst each site, sometimes each year they're separated differently. This is to give an overall. And the other is that our revenue is not distributed equally amongst each site. So the revenue quite often doesn't reflect the expenses. So this allows a summary to better see how the overall revenues are covered by the overall expenses. And you'll see is overall a decrease in the waste management or the environmental services budget. So in our general waste budget, changes there, just a slight increase in our digital services cost of $1,500, and that's to expand sort of our digital services through Mesh and other applications to allow us to collect user data as well as the regular reporting that we have at sites.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Melissa, is what you're referring to the digitalized landfill card, or is that a separate project?
If I may, Your Mayor? Yes, that would be including that.
Okay, amazing.
So as we're looking now is to have digital reporting of daily logs and that sort of thing, and the digital ID systems to have a combined system, essentially one system to use for all of those.
Go ahead.
So I guess it's good news. It looks like though the budget is going down, but maybe that line item, other services, 2025 included other things, which is being offset. But I would have thought that going digital on landfill cards would be an expensive proposition.
It's been a benefit of a bit of time to be working through it and to looking at different options. And I think that, and I will be bringing a report to council that we can look at a fairly low cost way to implement that.
Councillor Berry.
And the plan is that, again, those users that do not want to have a digital card can do it manually.
Like I said, that certainly has been the direction from council, but it will be part of the report that comes back to council to make that decision. And it'll be a transition, you know, it's not, nobody would have to change it. Not everything has to happen at once. That's one of the advantages of sort of moving into the digital world with those sorts of things is you can transition into them fairly easily. It's not a cut and dry, you have to stop one thing and start another. They can mesh together very well in that.
Well, and I do think that, you know, across the board for the entire municipality, when we're moving into the digital world, we always need to keep consideration for those folks that are, you know, that just won't work for them.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Berry.
Just in regards to sort of looking forward, I'm thinking next year, there's quite a bit of contributions from reserves in regards to the bin replacement, the tree clearing and the survey. I'm assuming the survey wouldn't have to be done again, and ideally there'd be a time difference for the tree clearing. Do you anticipate the same amount coming out of reserve next year? Or would you say a large portion of that is for the tree clearing and the property survey?
Am I through here? So yes, that transfer from reserve is largely tree clearing. Some of it is also transfer from reserve money that was put in reserve in 2025 for projects that didn't go ahead. coming out in 2026. So it's just a transfer of that money. But the majority is the tree clearing. And then bin replacement is an ongoing, we've always contributed to reserve for that, but the things like tree clearing, those are, one-time expenses, and that's like closures, the development of Maple Lake Operations Center, those are big infrastructure costs and not reoccurring. The only other one would be development of the trenches at the McClintock Lagoon site. That would be, there's a separate reserve fund for that. And that's not, not something I'm anticipating would be on the immediate future to move ahead with that project. Purchasing the land, yes, but probably not develop in there. I think that's for general. Move on to Dorset. And as I mentioned, I think I've covered pretty much in the general regrading and drainage costs are the one increase that you see in there. The storage shed there was something that was carried over from last year. Again, that's a permanent storage area for some of the materials that are stored without cover right now, and it is an ECA requirement that any storage is covered. So that's just bringing in a simple storage shed for that. It was nice, we saw some reductions in our construction and demolition hauling costs, which has been seen across the board, but at Dorset was nice to see. So that's offset, by our revenues, and it's nice to see those starting to come in line where we actually are not having an expense to ratepayers on that.
Councillor Berry.
This is a question for Melissa, but maybe for Adam as well. In regards to C&D and the airport roof repair, would there be an impact in this budget for not necessarily not Dorset, but in the landfill budget in regards to replacing the roofs at the hangars? I'm assuming there would be a large amount, or would that be shipped off somewhere else? I just wondered if there's an impact in the budget for that.
As far as the disposal costs for those materials, it would largely depend on how that contract was written. Quite often, contractors will handle their own materials. They may have resources. I'm not sure what the roofs are, materials are. Metal obviously has revenue available for recycling that. If shingles, there are recycling systems available for that, which when you're dealing with a larger volume of material can be utilized for that. So that I think would come along, and I don't think isn't reflected in the waste management budget, environmental services.
Any additional thoughts on that, Adam?
Thank you through you, Mayor. Melissa explained it very well there, that the buildings are, the building materials that would be coming out of the airport are metal and fiberglass insulation. So it would be my idea to put in the tender that we would take all of the material as we normally do for our own projects. So there would be very minimal cost to us for the C&D portion of it with the insulation. The metal, like Melissa said, is a revenue for us. So we would like to keep that. Not that we would reuse it. It would just strictly go into our metal pile and catch the revenue. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, carry on.
Moving on for Hawk Lake, again, fencing was something that was in the 2025 budget in 2025 and carried over. So that's being covered out of reserve, just our annual monitoring and equipment costs for maintenance of that site. It's getting to its time where things are stabilizing. So not a lot of costs and impacts there.
Any questions on that? Cliff Center? Okay.
And Maple Lake, as I mentioned, looking at a loading area for construction and demolition and a storage area, permanent storage area. So those are our capital projects offset by reserve. And the only significant increase in cost is the regrading and drainage work, which comes under property repairs, and overall a reduction in that budget.
I guess the only question that I had on that was why the contribution from reserves when expenses are considerably less for the year.
Maybe I could ask our treasurer to address that.
The contribution to reserves? Are you-
Contributions from reserves.
From reserves. It's just covering the cost there for the loading pad, materials management area, the 10,000 and the 25, and then the outstanding projects from 2025 that were completed. So it's just covering the costs for those specific items.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, and I hiccuped on this one and in a couple of other places too. Remembering that the wages and benefits for public works have been taken out, it does impact the bottom line. And I had to remind myself almost as a sticky note on my desk every time. I think that's probably the big difference here.
Thank you.
If I may, through you, Mayor, just to note, so the under the comments, the net wages reductions, so those are the wages and benefits have been taken out of the budget. So they were taken out of the 2024 budget. So we're comparing apples to apples there. So those reductions are real.
Okay, it's just kind of hard to see when you don't, when I see, okay, never mind. I'll take that back. Carry on.
That's all right. If you just did the math of the two columns, it doesn't add up to that same reduction. But when you take out those wages, then you still see that the reduction without that is much larger.
Any other questions on Maple Lake? Okay, carry on.
And then Oxtongue again, the tree clearing and site work, adding in the bunkers there is the only major change there. Slight increase in cost to consulting services, and that's just to utilize a consultant to help with that site work, with the tree clearing, doing surveying and that sort of thing to make sure that that project is meeting our requirements.
Any questions? Okay, on to Pine Springs.
In Pine Springs, primary role there is as a landfill site with limited collection services, and the cost to replace the propane heater is our main expense there.
Any questions on Pine Springs? Okay. On to the lagoon.
And Lagoon, again, offset by our reserve is the survey and appraisal work for the trench site. Otherwise, all costs are fairly stable there. And that is a net 7% reduction, excluding the wages.
Okay, and any questions on the lagoon? Hopefully we're successful in acquiring a piece of property there this year and can move forward. That's been a long-standing item.
It would certainly be nice to put a check mark beside that one.
So, I mean, really, we've identified the specific parcel of land that we're looking for there. So we should be able to reasonably go ahead and, even if it's a matter of a lease, proceed with that.
If I may, through Mayor, last year we went through some sampling. We did some soil sampling and test pits just to establish that the area was suitable and where trenches could be located. As well, we met with the ministry as well as the forest management leaseholder there. So they requested a couple of modifications to the original design. So those have gone back to the ministry. We're just waiting for their okay on that before we move ahead with the survey.
More waiting for the ministry.
It's one of those projects, unfortunately, and I'm not sure if nobody likes it there or what it is, but everything seems to sort of get to the end of the line. But we're keep pushing forward, and hopefully we'll get somewhere.
Any questions or comments? Okay, I think that takes care of your department.
Yeah, the environment committee is the only last one on there, and just supplies and
Oh.
materials. That's it.
Sorry. Any comments or questions about the environment committee? That's pretty straightforward. Although I see that there are some, some rather lofty plans by the Environment and Stewardship Committee, but there's a reserve there that can be used for that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, I'm wondering, given the time frame that we talked about, if we should defer Parks and Trails until tomorrow, given that, the amount of discussion that we might have there, and move into, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So Madam Mayor, just to point back to the agenda, the only other one or the next one was planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And after that, just looking for that.
I know.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. O'Callahan, to put you on the spot a little earlier than anticipated.
It's quite all right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So just starting with the highlights, this is very similar information that was presented to council during projects and priorities. So just to run through the list, we're continuing the development charges review with the county. The implementation of the service delivery review, specifically to do with the potential for consolidating official plans within the county. The development of a GIS strategy, again, in collaboration with the county. And we are looking at purchasing an additional vehicle specific to the short-term rental bylaw and general bylaw enforcement. Continued implementation of the license of occupation policy previously approved by council, as well as the short-term rental bylaw. And continuing to support affordable housing projects throughout the township. And continue our collaboration with the Ministry of Natural Resources with respect to Crown land and municipal interests on certain parcels of Crown land. And this year also be doing a in-depth review of our planning department fees associated with applications and reviewing that against what our neighboring townships or similar townships would be charging for these services.
Any questions on the highlights at this point? Councillor Barry.
I'm just gonna ask, because I didn't see a tab for it, but in regards to housing, was there consideration for putting, a transfer into reserve for housing? The reserve there is only $10,000. And my understanding was it was gonna be an annual contribution.
That's a good question. Any comment from staff?
If I may, we did not include a transfer at this point because we really don't have specific plans in relation. I don't know if Angie may have further thoughts on that, but it isn't in there at this point.
I don't have any further comment other than if council wishes, we can include it.
I do think it's a good suggestion because it has been identified as a priority and, you know, if we do have an opportunity to go forward, it would be helpful. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Indeed, it is one avenue for support, but the avenue that we've been exploring far more proactively is the donation or otherwise disposition of lands for that purpose. And I kind of think that that's a pretty great offering. If the terms are right, that would be our principal offering for affordable housing. Because as soon as we start thinking about anything other than disposition of land for that purpose, we're talking about huge sums of money. And we are already covered for certain things via the county and its partnership with CKL in providing affordable housing for the whole county. So in a way, you know, our taxpayers are already supporting through that way. And in addition to that, I think the disposition of lands would be a great contribution. And after that, the price tag just gets so hugely high. I don't think it's an avenue I'm interested in exploring at the time.
Councillor Richards?
Yeah, I actually remember we had this conversation last year and we decided for that close specific reason not to contribute further to a housing reserve because we were going to do a donation of land and dispose of other lands. And I'd like to see that move forward this year.
The
in
disposal of
us
other land.
moving that, you know, forward on, you know, we saw land that was worthy of development to a potential developer that we could dispose of, take some of that money, put it into donation of land and potential helping with our local organizations in affordable housing. But to add further from our or to our reserves on the levy, I don't think is necessary.
I know one of the things that in my thinking was that, I mean, we've got two parcels, fairly substantial parcels that might have some opportunity for development on, but the two single residential lots that are in the Maple Lake Estates don't seem to have much appeal for anybody. And I'm wondering what council's thoughts are about the possibility of putting them on the market and gaining some revenue from that. Councillor Richards?
Actually, it's my understanding that Habitat may be interested in those estates within Maple Estate to develop housing. Yes, they do develop, you know, full developments of housing, but they also do single homes development. So maybe we want to have more conversations with them.
Well, and that is
before
something
we go
that's
forward.
that's on the books. Sean is trying to schedule a meeting with Habitat and myself, and you know, we can see where that stands. Go ahead.
Well, just on that note, just this morning, I've been speaking with a representative from Habitat, so I think we have something tentatively scheduled for March 17th. So I'll be sending a meeting invite out shortly to both yourself, Mayor, and Angie. And following that meeting, I'll be bringing a report back to council, and we'll be seeking further direction on, well, whatever comes of that meeting, but also the other lands that council's identified as being potential lands that could be disposed of.
Madam CAO.
And should any of the larger pieces of land be disposed of for affordable housing? Another way that, I mean, if council is aware that the township can assist is through waiving of fees. So building fees, zoning amendment fees, should that be required, those sorts of things.
Councillor Berry.
The question in regards to, and I mean, the budget isn't the best place for the question, but just while it's fresh in my brain, by selling the property to a developer, how does that work in regards to keeping that property per se affordable? Once it leaves our hands, how do we, there's no mechanism to, that's one of my concerns.
There is, and I'm not sure whether this is through CKL, but it just seems to me that there's some equation that's required when a developer is putting up a specific number of units, that a certain percentage of them should be affordable housing units. But I'm not sure if that's just through CKL or whether that's kind of a countywide thing. But, I don't think that we would offer property to a developer who is just going to sell or lease high rental units or, high cost units. We're looking more for affordable housing. Well, any housing really, but more emphasis on affordable. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I do think this is a wheel that doesn't have to be reinvented because there are terms of disposition that are in place around Ontario where it's very clear. You either do what you said you were going to do or X happens. And I can't speak to what X is, but for example, I think of Peterborough when they sold the old YWCA for $1 or the YMCA for $1 and on the expectation that X would happen. And if X doesn't happen, then there are consequences. So that's just an exploration piece, but there is legislation in place in Ontario that allows us to create terms that prohibit that from happening.
Councillor, excuse me, Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I think we're talking about two different things. Like there's a donation of land to release for development of affordable housing or a mixture of affordable housing. Because I think even Habitat would have a mixture of market versus affordable, deeply affordable levels within it to make the project viable. But then there's also possibly disposition of land to a developer to build as he would like. But the money coming from that would go towards us supporting the affordable housing otherwise. And we would get taxation from a new development as well.
Any other comments at this time? Back to you, Sean.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to tab 59. It's just the general planning page here. So really one of the things I wanted to highlight was the increase for legal fees. Council see a substantial increase there, as well as under training and education for some GIS training for the building and planning assistant.
My question there with respect to the legal fees, does that include the recent cost estimates that we got on surveying that are attached to the legal issues?
No, those were received after the preparation of the budget.
So we'd have to make an adjustment for that. Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about the suggested revenues here for the license of occupation. I'm concerned we're not actually going to see that. At least at that level of expected revenue and how that will impact your bottom line. Because I think your legal fees are probably going to be more. But that being said, we seem to have two reserves within our reserves for legal fees that we are contributing to and not drawing from. So we do have that in place to back that up, but I am concerned about this level of revenue for sure. I don't see us getting that amount of money from license of occupations.
Go ahead, Sean.
So just how I arrived at that number, as council will recall, when we were implementing the license of occupation policy, there was a 3-year rollout, this being year 3, where those properties who would be subject to a license of occupation need to come into compliance or additional enforcement action would be taken. So this is the year we're anticipating that we should be receiving those applications. Now, that being said, I will be bringing a report to council in the future, just on the license of occupation. So, but currently as it stands, this is the year that we are to be receiving those applications.
Councillor or Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Is there outreach, general outreach planned, which might have a cost associated for any property owner who doesn't actually know that they need to get a license of occupation? They just assume they own their,
No, there was no additional notification or public consultation planned at this point, but that's certainly something we can explore.
and so how would you how would you enforce that? Like, does it just shift to bylaw and bylaw goes out with the final E of enforcement? Because I know in bylaw, we've got, you know, the educate, help me, educate, encourage and enforce. And it sounds like we'd be heading straight towards enforcement.
Yes, that was the intent, just given that this is now the third year that
Yeah.
the policy's been in place, and there was a leniency period for the first 2 years.
Do you think that by now with, you know, with, you know, all of the information that's put out there that they, you know, there wouldn't be someone operating a short-term rental that weren't aware of the requirements?
This is license of occupation.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think probably the same might stand for that as well.
Well, I would only hesitate. I'm not confident that everyone knows that they don't own their waterfront. Whereas you do know if you've got a short-term rental or not.
Go ahead, Angie.
And so as Sean said, like, so 3 years ago, council gave the direction that those would be the leniency. And in my opinion, those 3 years were the education years. And so council directed that, and so Sean will be bringing a report to say, is this what you want to do? Is this going to be the enforcement year? And so direction can be further given then. But he built his budget based on the direction that council previously gave.
Fair enough. Any other questions or comments with respect to this section? Go ahead.
Not with regarding the loo, but with regards to the ever anticipated and hoped for leasing of certain or other structured governance of certain lands around parking or et cetera with M&R. Is there optimism here that we will be paying a lease, or is there anything in the budget that talks about what we might owe M&R in order to take over those lands?
So that won't be in the planning budget, but those discussions, some of those discussions are pending the outcome of the council discussions on parking. But we are in good communication, good standing with the M&R, that we're getting good information from them. And there's different options as far as costs for certain levels of agreements that we'd be entering into, from leasing to outright ownership. So that will be something that's coming back to council later on in the year.
Do you anticipate that if that should go according to our hopes, that there would be a major impact on our budget, or that it, I'd hate to be caught unawares?
The purchase of price right now, it's my understanding that's at market value, so there could be some substantial costs if we were to go that direction, but the leasing options are not, they're not significant numbers, is my understanding.
Any other questions in this section? So into short-term rentals.
Thank you. Yes, so you'll note there's a reduction in the anticipated license and registration fees, and that's strictly to do with the fact that most of the applications will be renewals now, which is $250 versus the $500 initial fee that would be charged. And then just under consultant services, the second year of our contract with Granicus.
Questions? You know, one of the items that I did check off there was the mat tax revenues and us having a discussion with respect to that. I see that, you know, there's a reference that some of the mat tax revenues would go into docks and landings. But I also seemed to me that I saw in Parks and Rec that Matt tax go to the Parks and Rec master plan. So I think we need to have some clarification, maybe a bit of discussion about that. Go ahead.
And so council will recall that that direction was given, that Matt tax would go to Ducks and in building the budget, there was, you'll see, as you mentioned in PRT with regard to the master plan, is that that's just our recommendation, that just for 1 year, you redirect some of that money to build that plan, and then it go back. That's just in the development. That's not any from here on out recommendation.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Dayu, then Councillor Richards, then Councillor Barry.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that's spot on.
Councillor Richards.
You mentioned in your preamble, the purchase of an additional vehicle for SDR bylaw enforcement, but I don't see that in the breakdown sheets.
So I believe that was budgeted for last year, so it was going to reserves and then coming out of reserves. Jeannie, was that correct, or?
It went into reserves last year. It was a capital expenditure and then it didn't go through, so it was put into the reserve. At this point, we did not indicate purchasing the vehicle for this year. And I'm sorry, I may have to turn it over to bylaw to clarify, because we did not put it in to purchase this year. If it does purchase, if we do, the money will come back out of the reserve.
Oh, I think we just heard that we were going to buy another vehicle. Go ahead.
So when we built the budget, that was the intent. And since that time, when we've been revising before it came to council, we do have a thought process around the truck that's at the airport. It's scheduled to be replaced and is still in very, very good shape. And so it was thought that maybe this year we could utilize that vehicle, which, as council is aware, we're not at this stage going to able to hire a septic inspector, so that vehicle can be shared between whomever's doing the septic inspections and the short-term rental inspections, because they're different shifts, so to speak, in some time. So that was a thought process.
Okay.
Just to leave that money in reserve for them.
You see hands up over here, Councillor Barry.
Just in regards to the discussion about the Matt Act and Trails Master Plan, I'm in support of that, but I'd also like to just revisit that decision at the end of the budget. Is that
Sure.
possible?
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So next is the Committee of Adjustments. This is pretty straightforward stuff.
Yeah, there's no real substantial changes from last year's budget.
Any questions, Councillor Barry?
Was there supposed to be another training exercise, or is that covered in here?
So it's not, but that's something we'll be looking at once after the election, when we form a new committee of adjustment. But I think with the training that's available right now, that should be fairly sufficient.
Yeah, we did have a brief discussion about that at the Committee of Adjustment, kind of came to terms with the fact that because it's so close to the election and the membership may change, that it'd be more beneficial for the new Committee of Adjustment. Go ahead.
Just clarification, Sean, when will the next term of council review the comprehensive zoning bylaw in the 4-year term?
It would, yes, I believe it would fall under that term of council. But first we need to update our official plan, so there's some timeframes associated with that.
Oh, well, and speaking to that, where are we at with relation to a consolidated official plan for the county?
So that's part of the service delivery review. So the planners have developed a report that will go up to the CAOs for review and then further review by county council. So it's in the works as far as recommendations being put forward, and then it would be put forward to council for consideration following that.
Okay, any questions? Shoreline allowance?
No real substantial changes there. It's something that the fees is just associated with the application fees that we would receive with the sale of or applications for the purchase of shore road allowances, but the actual sale of property is not something that we reflect in the budget.
Okay, okay, sorry, Councillor Barry.
I think I ask this every year, but at what point will you see this start to decrease? Do you have any, I mean, as more and more shorelines are being purchased? We're not making any more, so I just wondered.
Yeah, it's a fair question. It's a challenging one to have a accurate number for. I mean, there's a substantial number of waterfront properties and most would have a shore road allowance associated with that, but yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't even hazard a guess.
I think it would be interesting to know like what percentage has been purchased to what is remaining, just for budget purposes.
I can certainly explore what I can see what I can do. Yeah.
And then my other question is, in last year, there was a sale of property. Can someone jog my memory on what that was?
Oh, sorry, in the shore road allowance
Yeah.
budget. So the sale of property, we don't include a number there because we just don't know what the total sale or lands that we sold, what they would be.
No, this was in the sheet behind that. In previous year to date, there was a sale of property for 189.
And I'm sorry, under what tab?
It's in shoreline allowance, but it's not the sheet with the colors, it's the next sheet.
So
Oh,
the
okay.
189 is the, if I may, the sale of property, that would be the shoreline road or the shorelines that were sold in 2024.
Okay.
And then in 2025, there was $249,000 worth. And again, we don't primarily budget for those because we won't know what the value, market value and sale price will be until the time.
Okay, so that was just the shoreline.
Yes.
Thank you.
So not too much on the cultural plan. Which is maybe something that we should be thinking about. I mean, we do have a cultural plan in place. And there hasn't been any activity, and I'm really not quite sure where that should live or how we should be managing that. But I don't want us to lose touch of the fact that we do have a cultural plan. We're not acting on it. But
Well, we do have one on the books, but the last activity that we undertook was with the interim committee. This is a few years back now, and we sort of saw how with new roles at the county and various goings on, there were certain things that didn't really have to belong in the cultural plan anymore. For example, there's a whole economic development section of the county, there's a tourism section. So there was a map created which broke down the parts of that plan into who sort of takes a natural ownership of it. And there was almost nothing left for the township once that had been done. So it was sort of ended.
I guess it's something that I would like to see revisit. I can't imagine that we as a township would have a cultural plan and that there would be nothing for us to do going forward. I somehow am a bit challenged by that. Go ahead.
Is this the first year where there's nothing in the budget? in regards to supplies, materials, mileage, contribution. This is something I would like to see discussed at the end. Like to discuss this.
Okay.
And I'm, sorry, further to that, I'm assuming that money was then transferred somewhere that was unspent.
Possibly was. Sorry, overarching.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It would have been part of the whole makeup of the whole budget. It can be, if council so wishes, we can put it to the cultural plan reserve for last year. The 2,500.
Do we have a cultural plan reserve?
Yeah, we do, so we can do that.
So it went into working fund, sorry, it would have gone into working funds instead of into specifically.
We can do.
Okay, I see that the next tab is strategic planning. I wasn't aware that I guess I found that I wasn't sure that it fit under your level of responsibility, but
If I may, Mayor, we didn't include anything this year for 2026. The new council will need to include it for 27 when they do their new strategic. The current one goes into them.
okay. Nothing under road closing. Nothing under economic development. And that would appear to be the end of your responsibility. Thank you. So with council's indulgence, I think maybe we might call it a day for budget review and reconvene tomorrow morning. I think we should have enough time tomorrow to cover what we need to cover. It's that's okay with everyone? So now I have completely lost our agenda sheet. I guess I'd look for a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councilor Short, be resolved by law 2026-21, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings the council held during the special meeting be received and read the first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillor Richards, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councilor Richards, second by Councilor Berry, be resolved special meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:48 a.m.
All in favor? That's carried. And thank you, everyone. Indulgence, and we'll see you all again tomorrow. And yeah, thanks for your indulgence.